Hello, and welcome to Working with Languages with me, Sonia Kamshoff. Together with my guests, we will explore what languages they speak and where they learned them, their background and their career path, and they will also share their favorite word in a language they speak. This week's guest on the podcast Working with Languages is Stefanie Mellano. Stefanie is originally from the UK and now lives in North Italy, and she is a film and TV subtitles translator. As usual, I like to ask a fun question at the beginning of each episode, and that is, Stefanie, what's your favorite word in a language that you speak?
Hi, Sonia. I speak Italian and English, and my favorite word or phrase, because it's said together in Italian, is mi raccomando, because it took me ages to understand exactly what it meant, because it means a million different things depending on the context. It could mean be careful, whether you're saying it seriously or not, maybe to children or whoever. Take care, don't forget, be good, take it seriously. So it really is something that you have to have all the context and the situation in order to understand what it means.
It's a really good one. So you speak Italian. Can you tell us more about where you're from and how you learned the languages that you speak?
Yes. So my mum is English and my dad is Italian. So I was born and grew up in England. I went to school in England. I studied Italian at school because I went to a Roman Catholic school. And my dad moved back to Italy when I was quite young. So I always used to have my holidays here. So I used to play with my cousins, although they always wanted to practice their English. So I think we did a little bit of Italian and a little bit of English. Then when I finished school at 16, in England we have GCSEs. So I had an exam in every subject and then a grade in every subject. You then go on to do 2 years from 16 to 18, which are A-levels, which you usually do if you want to go to university. And depending what you want to study at university, that would have an effect on your choices of A-levels. So I wanted to choose Italian because I then wanted to go on and choose Italian at university. But unfortunately, there weren't enough people for a class, so they didn't offer Italian. But I thought my chances of studying Italian at university were none. So I went on to study law. I thought I might become a lawyer. But then once I came to Italy when I was 21, so I was still studying at university because I was doing distance learning. And all my friends were going off and finishing university, having a gap year. So I thought I'd come to Italy for a year as an experience, improve my Italian. But then I actually realised that I wanted to study Italian. I didn't really want to study law. So I applied to another university, distance learning in the UK. And they sent me a test and I got in. So I studied it as my degree. I've got a degree in Italian. So it was language, literature, history, a bit of everything really. Also things that Italian students study in school, like Dante. But yeah, and then I've lived here for 18 years now. So it just got better and better. I think the real key was actually living in the country and needing to express myself in the language. It's the best way to learn.
That sounds interesting. When you moved to Italy, first you said you did, let's call it a gap year. When did you start working and what did you do at the beginning?
Once I decided to change my degree, I already had a good level of Italian. And the idea of becoming a translator had always appealed to me because my uncle is actually an interpreter. So he's always done a bit of translation, but mainly interpreting. So translation is the written word and interpreting is the spoken word. So when I changed my degree, I thought that's what I'd really like to do. So I started practicing and helping out people that I knew in Italy who were graduating, and everyone had to translate their theses into English. So I'd either proofread it when they tried to translate it themselves or translate it from scratch and then check it over with them, making sure I got all the terminology correct and everything. So yeah, I started before I'd even graduated. And then after I graduated, I was disappointed to realise that to become a translator, I'd probably have to go self-employed. And I was a bit young and naive and scared. it's particularly complicated in Italy. So I didn't pursue it as a full-time job at the start. I thought I'll go and focus on companies that work with English and so that work with an international audience, an international client base. So I did that for quite a few years whilst translating on the side. I didn't actively go and look for clients, but there's a lot of word of mouth here, and I live in quite a small town in the north of Italy. So native English speakers and translators aren't that easy to come by in a local sense, because now I work with the whole world because we have the internet, and we did have the internet when I graduated. I'm not that old, but relied on people who would say, oh, I know Stefanie, she does translation, and they'd pass on their contact details for me. And it wasn't until I fell pregnant with my first child in 2018. I was put on early maternity leave, and I suddenly started thinking, no, I actually really want to do this as a job. This is what I want to do. I'm going to become a mum. I'm going to have a child. It's a very big and important job. But I also want my paid working life to have much more meaning for me, not to mention have the flexibility to be able to organise myself around him as well. So I was on early maternity leave. I started doing courses in subtitling because subtitling was something that had always interested me. I used to come over to Italy for my holidays when I was younger, and we used to watch Rai, which is a bit like the Italian version of the BBC. And I always used to ask my dad to put the subtitles on for me because it was a bit difficult for me to follow. And I always thought, oh, that'd be an amazing job. So yeah, in 2018, I signed up for a few courses and then started to just practice subtitling things like videos on YouTube or videos that I had on my computer. And it all went on from there. There was a little bit of a break because he was born and I couldn't really do a lot, but I never went back to my job that I went on maternity from. I ended up resigning, teaching a bit of English on the side so that I had a few hours of steady income. And then for the rest of it, built up my client base and went for it in the translation world.
Wow. So how did you learn how to subtitle films and TV shows?
There are quite a few courses available. So they teach you the basics. Every company has its own guidelines, but they more or less follow the same kind of structure. So you study the guidelines and practice, because obviously you have to know how to translate. That is one side of it. But there is a whole different technical side of it as well. Obviously, when we look at subtitles on the screen, they have to stay on the screen long enough for us to be able to read them. They can't be too long that we don't have time to read them, both how long the line is and how long it stays on screen. So maybe your beautiful translation that conveyed perfectly what the person is saying, you can't use that because it's too long. So there's a lot of juggling. You have to find the right translation, but that also respects the technical guidelines. And that really only comes with practice and lots of experience and doing it again and again.
Yeah. And do you use a specific software?
I do. I have a professional program on my computer for if I work for like direct clients. So if someone calls me up and says, oh, I have this video and I need to subtitle it, then I have my program that I can import the video and then I subtitle directly on there, and you can export it into all the different formats that anyone would require.
And what kind of shows or series, films, what do you subtitle?
All sorts of things. I subtitle films, TV series, documentaries, even sports documentaries. I even worked for a theatre company once who decided to do a film adaptation of a Shakespeare play. So they translated it into Italian, and then I had to re-subtitle it in English. So obviously even there you have to, with everything, you have to find the right register, the right level of language for the material that you're translating or subtitling. So that it had to be Shakespeare and Shakespearean, the language. But obviously if you're subtitling a reality TV series, the language is going to be very different, or a period drama. So there really is a huge variety of things that I've worked on and that I continue to work on.
Do you have a favorite project that you have worked on? I don't know if there's any confidentiality around it, how much you can say and how much you're not allowed to say.
Almost everything I work on is covered by non-disclosure agreements. But a few things that I've worked on I'm allowed to talk about because I've asked for permission and they've said yes. I worked on the second series of Zero Calcare, which is available on Netflix. Zero Calcare is from Rome and he writes and draws comics, but it's all very colloquial Roman slang, and it's very funny, and it was very fun to work on because I had to find the same kind of level of language in English that Zero Calcare uses, and I think I did a good job. But the best thing was that because I was able to say that I worked on it, other people have seen it and they've also complimented me on the translations that I used. So that was really nice.
Very nice. And do you always work from Italian to English?
Yes, I work from English to English. A lot of things, whether they're going to be dubbed or whether they're going to be subtitled, there has to be a base transcription. So I work on a lot of English things as well, just doing it's not just because there's a lot that goes into it, but you do the English transcription. So you basically subtitle the program in English.
Yeah.
And put lots of annotations for every double meaning, for everything that's not quite clear, for anything that's culturally specific that might not apply to other languages, because then that film or documentary or TV series or whatever it is will be translated into all the other languages, and they use the English subtitles as a start. Yes, if I'm translating, then I only translate from Italian to English, even though I'm half Italian and even though I've lived in Italy for 18 years now. I grew up speaking English in England, so I was exposed to the language and I did speak it with my cousins, but it wasn't like being fully bilingual where you've maybe got that complete bilingualism at home.
Yeah.
So I always translate into English because I'm always going to have more of a command of the English language, just in the nitty gritty bits, because I am very fluent in Italian. But I wouldn't have the same confidence or anything like that if I was translating to Italian. I'd always, my job always has quality control checks afterwards. But even before I'd submit something, I'd always want someone else to look over it because I wouldn't have that 100% confidence that it's correct and suitable, like a suitable level of language as well.
Yeah. Do these shows also get translated into different languages?
Yes, I work for some big streaming companies and they translate everything they do into more languages than I can even imagine. So yeah, I do from Italian to English and then I do English so that it can then be translated literally into every language that you can think of.
And how does it work? So if you want to translate it into, say, 20 languages, and do you have 20 translators who speak Italian well enough and then translate into their own languages, or are there any sort of in-between languages?
Lots of companies, large companies who have to translate into lots and lots of languages use English as a kind of pivot language, which means that, for example, something in Italian would be translated into English, and then from English, it would be translated into French, Korean, Japanese. Quite a few companies do that, also because there's not always enough translators that maybe translate from Italian to Japanese, for example.
Yeah.
So they need the English as a pivot language so that they can find enough translators in order to be able to translate into all the different languages.
Oh, that's so interesting. But isn't it the case that then when you have one language in between, is there a risk that some of the meaning gets lost?
It can do. That's why it's really important. You have to annotate and put notes on everything. So if there's a play on words in Italian and I translate it into English, there might be completely different words, but you have to put in the notes and explain exactly and literally what the Italian means, exactly and literally why you've chosen the English, because someone who might be translating into French might have another play on words that means exactly the same, but also like the actual words that they use are completely different.
And you then work directly with film producers, or streaming companies, agencies? Who are your clients?
So I already work with agencies who on their side work with bigger streaming companies or TV channels. I have worked directly with some tourism companies, theatre companies. I'd love to start working more closely with smaller Italian production companies or post-production companies and independent directors and producers, because it's lovely to be able to have that working relationship where you work more closely together. You get a clearer idea of what they want to portray and communicate with the content that they've created. It just makes it would make my job so much easier as well. And yeah, there's more communication and transparency between the things.
Yeah.
I think like films and TV series, there's a lot that goes into the cast, the locations, everything to do with the film. And I feel the subtitling and the dubbing side is like an afterthought a lot of the time, whereas it would be lovely if it was an integral part of the creation of the film or TV series or documentary or whatever it is, especially if you want your content to be viewed by a wider audience. And I'm thinking Italian producers and directors, English is going to be the main language for them. So yeah, I'd love for that to happen.
That sounds great. Let's hope they get in touch with you. Are you also involved somehow in edit dubbing, or do you simply do subtitles?
No, I work in dubbing. So I work both with big companies and smaller companies. Again, both on English content and Italian content. It's a bit different to subtitling because you don't have all the technical constraints because these words aren't going to go on the screen. But you still have to translate and have the right register and level of language, because then these translations would go to a dubbing studio. This is something else which I don't personally do, but the dubbing studio would then look over the translation and look at the lip movements and everything that's happening on the screen, and they their own dubbing script. So they base it on your translations. But if your translation at that moment, the person's lips aren't moving as much as they should, or the opposite, then they have to try and find an alternative and a compromise that works well, both for the meaning and the lip movements.
You mentioned you worked with theatre companies and in tourism. What do you do for them?
Well, the theatre companies I've worked, like I said, on that Shakespeare play. It was a film adaptation of The Tempest, which they're now trying to enter into different film festivals. So if it does get accepted, that would be nice. And I work with some local tourism companies because I live right at the foot of the mountains in the north of Italy, the foot of the Alps. And there's lots of mountain tourism here. One of my clients, I'd always translated their printed material. They do a lot of leaflets and trekking guides, mountaineering guides and things like that. And in the past, I'd say couple of years, they've started doing videos. So they video people who go on an experience, whether that be climbing or skiing, and they talk about the whole experience, about the people that they meet in the different mountains, the different towns that are in the mountains, and they ask me to subtitle them into English.
That sounds so interesting. You really saw that at different industries, and even within one of these industries, you have a lot of different projects. That sounds you have a lot of creativity around you. I also wanted to ask, do you see any trends in the industry at the moment? Anything that is changing?
I think there is a kind of a belief that AI is going to solve everyone's problems and it's going to take all our jobs away. Let's solve the problems of the people who need the work done and take the work off of us. I'm keeping an open mind and I'm being wary, but I don't believe that it will happen fully because, especially with Italian, there's the whole non-verbal side. So yes, AI can translate, and in some cases it's quite good. I check it out from time to time. I like to see how the competition is. But there are things that I don't think it will be capable of. Maybe I'm naive, I'm not sure. There are some agencies out there who tend to try and use AI or machine translation and then not pay very much to people who just have to check the subtitles and sort them out. But from talking to colleagues who do take on these jobs or have taken them on in the past, it's not as rosy and wonderful as it seems. They still have to, a lot of the time it takes longer to sort something out that's been translated with AI than do it from scratch.
Do you think company will revert back to using humans?
I think the ones that really care about the content that they're putting out there will. In every industry, there's always people who want to pay the least amount possible and aren't really fussed about the result. But I think there's space for everyone. And the companies that really want to put something out there that they're sure has been done as professionally as possible will continue to use humans, or maybe go back to using humans if they've had a little detour and tried the AI road out.
If subtitles go out and they're not incredibly well done, of course they would not be yours. But if anything like that happens, do production companies or streaming companies, do they get feedback about that?
I think so. The companies I work with usually have quality control checks before the subtitles go out. So there would be someone like me who does the translation. I also do quality control. So there would be that person. And then sometimes the company itself will have someone in-house who also checks them. So I think if you've got a workflow like that, it's quite difficult for something to get out that wouldn't be of a high quality. But there are a couple of streaming companies where I've seen things that aren't that great. And I think they come to know about it from the public. Then whether or not they want to do something about that, I'm not sure.
I found it fascinating because I think we've all seen subtitles at some point, but most people don't even think how subtitles get into a film or a series. People are just used to having them. I think it's a great job that you have. And I also like that when you were on maternity leave, you were very proactive in deciding, okay, this is what I want to do in the future, and you took charge of doing it. Is there anything else that you would like to say that I haven't asked you?
I was thinking before about how you said that, like, the different industries. As translators as well, not everyone translates everything. And the thing that I find it most useful to compare it to is like a doctor. You study medicine, but then everyone specialises in a different type of medicine. So I, for example, am a translator, but I specialise in audiovisual translation. So that's subtitles and dubbing. And then I've picked just a few years. So it's tourism, business, and food and wine, because I worked as well in a food company a few years ago for the export office and used to do their translation. So what that means is that you can be an expert in those areas. I wouldn't really take on medical translations. I wouldn't go and translate things about archaeology because I don't know anything about it, and I'd have to do a lot of research beforehand, whereas someone who always does medical translations probably also has an educational background in medicine as well. I've done legal translations in the past because I did study law, but I'm leaning away from that now because it's a very complicated area. I studied law for 4 years, but I also don't particularly enjoy it. So I'd rather focus on the areas that I enjoy and that I find that I'm good at as well. I think a lot of people who enter into the profession think they have to say yes to everything and they have to translate everything, and we're just walking dictionaries. But it's not like that. Everyone hones in their skills in a particular area and tries to know as much as possible as they can about that. And then you've got the right terminology that you need when you come to translate something in that industry.
Yes, I completely agree. We all speak our languages, but we all specialize in specific things, areas, industries, and we have specific interests, things that we prefer to do or areas that we don't feel as comfortable in. I think it makes perfect sense, even as a translator, to specialize in specific areas. Yes, absolutely. Where can people find you?
I've got my website, so it's www.stefaniemellano.com. Might need the spelling, so I think it's a good idea to put it in the show notes. Yeah. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Stefanie Mellano. So I'd love to connect with other people. And if any film directors or producers are out there looking to translate their lovely content into English, then they've only got to send me a message and we can go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you for having me. It's been nice. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you liked it, please subscribe and share it with someone who may enjoy it too. As a new podcast, we value your feedback, so please leave us a comment or email us at the email in the show notes.